And take it away, Nancy.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm glad you could join me tonight. And thank you, Sheila, for having me. I really appreciate it. And so do the angels. They're always looking for an opportunity to get a word in, whoever will listen. Um, I wanted to prepare something tonight. And I have to tell you that at least 4 or 5 times I sat down to figure out what I wanted to share with you guys tonight, what I wanted to talk about. And the angels wouldn't let me. They would not let me prepare. They told me to wing it. So I have the wing behind me. Um, and I guess what they mean by that is I'm going to give you a little bit of my story and how I started communicating with the angels, or should I say they started communicating with me quite unexpectedly, and then open it up to questions and answers. How's that sound? Okay, so my communication with, I'll call it the inner voice, consciously began November 18th, 1986, the very day that my fiance died suddenly and unexpectedly. And I was in, as I'm sure you can all imagine, a tailspin of grief and confusion and um, shouting to God. I never thought God heard my prayers, but and that, so I wasn't sure if you'd hear me at this point, but I never prayed so hard in my life as that moment that I got the news. It's like, why didn't you take me to, um, I just couldn't make sense of it. He was alive last night, and now this afternoon, he's dead. And I prayed. I'm also recovering alcoholic, and I had about 2 years, not even quite 2 years in the program at that time. And so my prayer went something like this: God, help me get through this alive and sober. And I promise I will help other people so they don't have to suffer like I am. Now, I have to tell you, I had no idea. I had no idea what any of that meant. I just knew I had to survive somehow. I wanted to survive. And it was like bargaining with God that, you know, get me through this alive and sober, and I will help other people. And I had no idea what that meant. But going on kind of like blind faith through that experience, um, I was leaving his parents' house that night to get to the safety of the AA club that he and I always went to. And I mean, the drinks were pouring, and I'm sure nobody would have faulted me for having a drink. I mean, except for my sponsor always said, nothing justifies a drink for an alcoholic. And certainly the death of my boyfriend, I mean, who would fault me? But I got out of there. Strength of those words. I was guided. I was definitely guided. And on my way walking to my car, I heard a clear voice in my head that said, Nancy, this is not the end. This is just the beginning. I turned to look to see who said that. And I'm alone. And my next thought was, oh my God, I lost my boyfriend. Now I've lost my mind because I'm hearing voices. So that was my first reaction to, I would say the answer to my prayer started at that point. I mean, it was immediate. And when we talk to the angels, or angels are messengers for God. So when we talk to God, angels bring the message to us immediately. Of course, I didn't know any of this in 1986. So I don't, it's kind of a blur that what happened first, second, third. But one of the next messages I heard from the angels was, um, we got your attention. They were like celebrating because they got my attention. And now our work together can begin, I heard. And I thought, what does that mean? What does that mean? The beginning, this is the beginning of what? So in my grief, and I don't know if it was before the funeral or after the funeral, I made an appointment with a Unity minister for grief counseling. And I went to him and, had a chat with him. And after we were done talking, we walked into the bookstore and he offered any book I wanted. Just help yourself, whatever book you want, you can have. And when he said that, a book fell off the shelf. You know what? You all had that experience, I'm sure, right? The book fell off the shelf, and I should have grabbed it off the bookshelf to show you. The title is Life Never Ends by a woman named Kay Leedy. I think you can still find it in rare bookstores now. I think it's out of print. I don't know. Life Never Ends by Kay Leedy. And he bent down and he picked it up and he said, I think somebody wants you to have this book. I think, as I remember, I read that book in one sitting. Might have been that night, might have been the next day, but I read it in one sitting. I couldn't get enough of, I wanted to know what happened to Jerry. What happened to him? Where did he go? What happens when you die? It's like I needed to know, or I didn't want to stick around. Well, this book was, Kay's husband had passed away, and this book was all channeling through automatic writing from him, from the other side. And it was chapter after chapter of, her asking him questions and him writing through her what heaven was like and what his experience was like and so on. And there were even samples in the book of the automatic writing that she did. And when I finished the book, I was elated to know, have some information from the other side. But she was lucky she had that ability to do automatic writing, and I didn't. Or did I? And I want to just back up to just say in 1986, there weren't a lot of books or people, or definitely not Zoom groups to discuss this stuff. There was just no information. There were books by Raymond Moody and Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and I think that's all I can remember to tell you of what was available at the time. So it was really rare that this book fell in my lap, literally. So again, it was kind of a blur that first couple of weeks or a month after he passed away. And I had looked I lived in Milwaukee at the time, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I remember picking up the phone book. I was desperately needing help. I needed to talk to somebody. I needed to learn more. It was like I was on this freeway of looking for information. And I picked up the Milwaukee phone book, which is about, 3 inches thick, in the white pages, mind you, and looked for spiritual anything. And there was one listing. It was Spiritual Frontiers Fellowship. And I called the number, and Bob answered the phone, and he invited me to come over to his home, and I could borrow any book that I wanted to and sit and talk with him, whatever I needed. I got to his house, and this woman answered the door. Her name was Rita. And she looked at me, and she saw the shock and the grief and my whatever state of mind I was in it during that time. And said, she made an appointment for me to come to her home like the next day so she could give me a reading. And she did a full channel reading. I had no idea what a full channel reading was. But she brought through Jerry and brought through the message that I was to do automatic writing to communicate with him so that we could say our goodbyes and close the relationship. And I remember looking at her and I said, what do you mean automatic writing? Talk with him. He's dead. He's gone. So that was kind of the really the introduction for me actually doing automatic writing, because she told me I could do it. And she taught me how to do it. She gave me a couple of simple instructions. She told me when to do it. She said 3 o'clock in the morning, light a candle. Ideally have a bouquet of white roses as a gift to spirit, a glass of water, your paper or tablet. You know, again, no computers yet. So all on paper with pen in hand. And I'll tell you that first night that I didn't know if I should stay up till 3 or set the alarm, wake up at 3. I did what she told me to the letter. I had a bouquet of roses. I had the water. I had the pad of paper. I had the candle lit. And I thought, and say some prayers. And she gave me the prayers to say. And I thought to myself when I held that pen, if this pen moves, I'm out of here. I mean, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know, would the pen just move on its own? What would happen? Would I see a ghost? I mean, I just totally didn't know what would happen. And yet, on the other hand, if nothing happened, I would be so disappointed. So I wanted something to happen, and then I wanted it to be automatic writing. I didn't want it to be that I was writing it. You know what I mean? I wanted the pen to move on its own. So I held it so tight that nothing could have pushed that pen. I mean, but I remember sitting there at 3 o'clock in the morning, prayers were said, everything's set. And my heart's pounding through my chest and I'm holding that pen very tight. And it took an hour and a half for the word welcome, a very shaky welcome, and then there was an L, and I got intuitively, I love you was going to be written. And then the sign off with J for Jerry. Hour and a half for that. And I was like elated. I was like so excited. I called Rita the next morning and I told her what had happened. And she said, I forgot to tell you that when you connect with spirit, they always say welcome. So that did it for me. I was connected. A tear comes to my eye when I think about it now. That was the start of my automatic writing with spirit. And from there, I basically taught myself. I remember reading a book by Ruth Montgomery at some point, and I'm not sure when, first, second, third, I don't remember, but I remember her talking about automatic writing in the book that I had read by her. Oh, and by the way, I met her later, 95. The current Inner Voice magazine is my interview with her, 1985. But she was like the godmother of automatic writing. And when I met her so many years later at that interview, I asked her about my writing and she said, sounds like you're connected to me. So that was good validation for me. And I was very grateful to hear that, because again, there weren't too many people doing this. And if there were, I didn't know about them. There was no way to really connect us all. Well, I'm going to kind of fast forward a little bit. What did I do with this writing? And what about that prayer, how I would help other people? Now, I had kind of forgotten about that. But meanwhile, from my connection at the Unity Church, I had read in their church bulletin that they had a Course in Miracles classes on Monday evenings at 7:30. And I thought, I need a miracle. I'm going to go to this class. And again, all this stuff that I'm telling you all kind of happened all during the same, I would say, 6-month time period. So I got myself to the Course in Miracles class on that Monday night. I probably in tears thinking of Jerry, and it's probably about a month after he died. And I was asked why I came. And I said why, that my fiance had died unexpectedly and I need a miracle. And they welcomed me. And one of the people one of the people in the class was, her name is Joanne Bauman. She's a miracle worker. She's a holistic healer, minister, and a Course in Miracles student and teacher. And maybe a couple of weeks later, I felt safe to share with her that I was communicating with an angel. By the way, during the automatic writing process, again, at some point, I'm communicating with Jerry, also figuring out how to do the writing and how that all works, teaching myself. The angels came through. The angels came through. In fact, I guess I could say they guided the whole thing. And at some point, they came through, the handwriting would change a little bit, the energy would feel different a little bit, and by what was said or what was written, change. So, okay, back to Joanne. I shared with her that I'm doing automatic writing and an angel's talking to me. And this was her reaction. I've been looking for somebody with your talent. She said, I've got clients who aren't healing the way I think they could be or should be. She believes in miracles and everybody can have a miracle. And she said, would you please ask your angels what I can do for so-and-so who's in a coma in the ICU and Milwaukee Hospital? I mean, just clients that she couldn't communicate with. She wanted me to ask the angels what she could do for them. And I remember thinking to myself, you think they'll help? I mean, silly me, right? And one by one, I was doing readings for her clients. And I would be doing the longhand writing. I had I think a 40-year-old typewriter at the time, one of these old Royals, the hunting pack. And so because nobody could read the fancy writing, I would then type it, and then I would send her through the mail the letter from the angels addressing her client's condition. And she would call me up sometime later after she saw the client, and she said, they got their miracle. They were healed. It's like, whoa, what do we have here? When she called me to tell me the results of the healing sessions, I was like wanting to shout it from the rooftops. It's like the world has to know this. We can be healed. We can ask the angels anything and they can help us. I mean, I was like excited, like beyond belief. And I thought, who would tell these stories? And again, in the late 80s, early 90s, there weren't the magazines that were later. I mean, I could name one that was out of Chicago, the Aspectarian, any kind of a holistic spiritual awareness magazine. They just weren't there yet. But I think looking back, I think the seeds were planted in people like it was in me to wake up to this ability at some point. And I think we were all over the planet, but we didn't know others were doing the same kind of work. So as I tried to find a magazine, which was few and far between, like I said, Milwaukee had a magazine at the time, but they weren't interested in spiritual matter. So, but as I was asking around, people kept saying, why don't you publish? Why don't you publish? And I would just laugh in their face. Me with my 40-year-old typewriter and no budget. And I mean, come on. I just would laugh at the idea. Well, but for the angels, I believe they've guided the whole thing. I give them credit, although they'll give me credit because they don't like to take credit. If you've ever talked to angels, they're just the messenger. But doors opened and I met people, and the first issue, The Inner Voice, which I thought would be like a one-page newsletter with Joanne's miracle story and my angel talk question and answer or something, printed on one piece of paper, folded in triplicate, stapled, stamped, and mailed to maybe 100 people if we knew 100 people between the two of us. And the first issue came out in 1993, January, in print. It was in print for like 9 or 10 years. Came out in 1993, and it was like a 12 page right off the bat, because the excitement of the people interested in that news. So again, I published it for about 9 or 10 years, and then I had to quit. That's another story that we don't care about, but I had to quit doing it for about 10 years. And during that time period, the angels kept tapping me on the shoulder saying, do the magazine again, do the magazine again. And I said, no, I'm not going to work that hard to sell ads to print the magazine that I give away for free. It's not going to happen. But the 10-year mark, which was in January of 2013, it was actually December because it was a month before the magazine. They tapped me again, and before I could say no, they said, you don't have to print it. We can do it all on the internet. So here we are. I've been publishing it since January of 2013, monthly on the internet. So you can go to the website and read all the back issues if you want, and read all the angel talks and what have you, whatever you're interested in, some of Joanne's columns. It was just one of those good news things that the angels led me to fulfill my promise of helping others. So that's that story. I wanted to make it shorter than that, but there's so much to it that I couldn't make it shorter. But I've taught people the automatic writing process for years in person. In the year 2000, I went in a trip around the country to 23 states, many different groups. There were small groups, but there are a lot of them. Teaching my You Can Talk with Your Angels technique, which is really automatic writing based on what I learned from myself, from my friend Rita, who introduced me to it, and Ruth Montgomery's work. Been doing communications with the angels since then, ever since 1986, been talking with them. And I believe that they're responsible for all this, okay? They've guided me through thick and thin, through many, many different lessons of my own. I do believe that we're all here in Earth School learning what we signed up for. And we all get stuck in something. We all wonder why something happened to us and what's the meaning of it. And we can always ask them for the bigger picture of the thing, and they will answer us in a very loving and wise way to lead us through it and help us understand why we, chose that lesson in the first place. They have helped many people through illnesses. Joanne and I had, this is our most famous case, a 4.5-year-old boy who had autism and was told by the Mayo Clinic. Mayo Clinic told his parents to take him home, put him in an institution. There's nothing we can do for him. Well, the parents didn't take no for an answer, and somehow they were led to find Joanne, who then asked me, what's the story with this family and what the story with this boy, and how can we heal him? And they, through several readings, because it was a whole family dynamic going on here, not just the autism in the boy, the angels told the story. In about a 6-month period, the family lived out of state. So Joanne would travel there like once a month. I went with her one time to work on the boy. And then as the story unfolded, she worked on the family. And they all understood what the lesson was. And in a 6-month period, the boy was not only healed in a normal school, had a little catching up to do, but not only was he healed, the parents were going through some kind of a vicious divorce I mean, they had a lot of money and they had a lot to fight over, and it was mean and vicious. They reconciled and remarried. That's what the angel guidance did for them. I got goosebumps when I tell that story. Um, there have been many, many stories. And again, those stories inspired me to do the magazine because the stories needed to be told. So that's how that led me. And I just actually today, kind of a red letter day for me. I put the final touches on my You Can Talk with Your Angels book, which leads you through the process, a little bit of my story, about as much as I told you, and then how to, some very practical advice and some experiences that different people have had using the process, and some of the results of the readings and the messages. Kind of a fun read, I think. And you can teach yourself how to do this. Or or you can come to my angel guidance group once a month, which is on the second Saturday of the month. So I think I'm feeling like I should stop there and just open it up for questions at this point.
And
I talked longer than I thought.
be sure to put the links to the magazine and to your group in the chat, please, so that anybody who wants to can get a hold of you. Susan, her hand is raised. Yes.
Thank you. Nancy, I think everything that led up to the point of you starting the magazine is absolutely awesome in the truest sense of the word, because all these things were happening at a time when talking about metaphysical stuff was something you really didn't do, right? It was a little bit taboo, and it was also at a time when the internet wasn't readily available to everyone. So again, it's not like as if information was easily at your fingertips. So I think it's really awesome.
People didn't have email. I mean,
Yeah.
this is email. This is pre all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's fabulous. And obviously you were meant to do this. So I do have a question though. Do you know the significance of the writing at 3 a.m.? Why she recommended that?
Yes. And I learned later that this is recommended oftentimes so I don't know where it originates, but at 3 a.m., if you've ever been up at 3 a.m., it's completely quiet on the planet. There's no traffic, there's no phones ringing, it's completely quiet. People are sleeping. And what I got from that, I did the automatic writing to the letter. I mean, I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I did all of the preparation and probably would do a session for at least an hour, if not longer. Then it's like 5 in the morning. And now do I stay up to go to work, or do I take a quick nap and set the alarm? I mean, it was really hard to do. So after about 2 weeks of this, I asked the angels, could we please change the time? This is like wearing me out. And they said, of course you can change the time to whatever's more comfortable. But we needed you to know to create what I call the 3 a.m. consciousness, to become completely quiet so you can rise above the noise, in other words, and listen to them, listen to the other side.
Well, 3 a.m. is considered to be the witching hour.
It's the latest term I heard was the veil is the thinnest.
Okay.
Again, I didn't know this back then. I mean, I was just like a child, bright-eyed child wanting to learn anything and everything I could about this. So.
Okay, Honey's hand is up.
Yes, can you hear me?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. Most of you have heard my story about how Sheila's book opened up worlds to me. And before that, she had taught me how to self-publish through Kindle. And so Nancy and others won't be a bit surprised to learn that, Nancy, everything you said gave me goosebumps because a couple of weeks ago, I was in the art studio, the gallery where my artist friend who did the photos for children's book I wrote about explaining death to children. I was in there and this painting just grabbed me. It was a magnetic pull, and I couldn't leave the gallery. I had gone there for a class, and I couldn't leave the gallery without inquiring about it. And I ended up buying it, but it was a while before I could meet the artist. Although I asked her right away what had inspired the work, I found out that it was the first thing she had ever done, totally going with the flow, with no plan in mind. She said she actually wrote down some prayers and didn't know if she was writing them for herself or for the future owner of the work. But she wrote down some prayers and she couldn't even remember what she wrote down, but she started just putting strokes on the paper, and then it led a life of its own, and it drew me right in anyway. So when I finally met her, this is hard to believe if you haven't been through this whole ride, but when I met her, she was concerned because her 8-year-old autistic son had a problem at school that day, and the counselor called her to pick him up, and Jasmine asked the counselor, did he ask to go home? And she said, not really. He asked his teacher to come see me, the counselor. And when he came and I asked him, do you want to go? Well, she asked him what his issue was, and he started to explain. And after a while, she said, do you want me to call your mother? And he said, I don't know, because I seem to be handling it myself today. And so the counselor called her out of caution, and Jasmine went and picked him up, took him home, and explained, or she had texted me that she could be a little late because of having to pick him up at school. And she was preoccupied with that until she connected with the school and set up a future appointment to talk with them, because she wanted to talk to her son, whose name is River, before she met with the school. And after that was resolved, we talked for a couple hours, probably at least 3, maybe 4 hours steady. And she is in a terrible marriage, but they were somewhere out west. I think she was born in California, in a town she said no one's proud to be from. And I said in California, and I can't remember what it was, but and then she moved to Colorado where she met the husband, and they were drawn together, and she felt it was kind of karmic. But then living together didn't work. But then something called her to the Greenville, South Carolina area, and the husband followed her because they already had the son at that point. And she said, honestly, we have no relationship right now, but we're living together for the sake of River. And our hours don't mesh at all. So when he's home, he takes care of River and vice versa. And she said, I imagine we'll get divorced, but I just haven't figured out everything. And she's incredibly connected, I can tell. And it sounds like the story, Nancy, of your 4.5-year-old boy, where it was a whole family dynamic karmically. So I'll be interested to tell Jasmine about your story and the angel writing, because I
Honey,
know she's very open to it.
the thing is, everything, I've come to believe that everything happens for a very good reason. That was told me a little pamphlet I picked up right after my Jerry died. This, you have to understand this happened for a very good reason. And I threw the pamphlet across the room and, what do you mean by that? And over the years, I've come to believe that everything happens for a very good reason. Or if you're a beginner into all of this, it just happened for a reason, and know that. And the angels, when asked, they will tell you what the reason is.
Wow.
Okay? We're not stuck here without help. And in prayer, ask, what is the meaning of this? And they'll reveal it to you. Okay?
Thank you.
Everything can be healed, according to my friend Joanne Louise Hay, who we followed early on. Everything can be healed if you have that wish or that intention. And if something can't be healed, like say, for instance, we had somebody who, a grown man, was very short and he was never going to be taller, and he wanted to be taller. That would heal his, thing that was going on with him. And the angel's response to him was in such a way that he became okay with his height, but then he felt taller. He felt like what he wanted to be. So even if things are impossible to heal, there's a reason for it. There's something you're moving through to learn from. And that's what I find exciting. Even the death of my boyfriend happened for a very good reason. Because, well, looking back, I didn't know it at the time. Looking back, the angel said, we finally got your attention. This was a setup for me to come here this lifetime and do this work. But of course, when we come through the veil, we forget the life plan that we set down for ourselves, right?
Right.
And something needed to happen to shake me awake or to break me open, like somebody said earlier in this group. It broke me open. It broke me open to be receptive to my life's work. So it was a very good thing that happened. Now, don't bless me like that again anytime soon. Thank you very much.
Hey, the hand up. We need you to unmute. You're muted, Kay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought
There
I
you go.
unmuted. Nancy, I read the article in your newsletter, the interview with Ruth Montgomery. How neat was that you had that opportunity
Thank you.
to meet with her? And the article is very extensive. I actually had to stop several times because the amount of information she gave you is almost overwhelming. You
And
really,
it's timely. It applies for
absolutely.
right now.
And I had read her books, and I have to go back and reread her books. I mean,
Yeah.
it was almost like there was a message in there for me personally that I have to follow through with. So that newsletter changes lives. And I think you do a fantastic job with that. And the articles are just wonderful. And I don't think there's some of the articles I don't resonate with, but there's always something in that newsletter that I do.
There's some I don't
Thank
resonate
you.
with too.
I thank you for all your hard work and the angels absolutely tapping you on the shoulder, telling you to get back at it. That was very important. I also want to ask you if you ever get signs that your angels are around you. I find bird feathers in very odd places. And when
Yeah.
I find them, it's just historically, I know I've got angels around me and I have to stop, regroup, think about why they're there, what I'm doing. It's amazing. But with me, it's bird feathers. I was wondering
Yes.
if anybody else gets any
Yes.
kind of sign.
Yes. Feathers is a popular one. Um, Makes me think of, well, a few stories. Just the other day, yesterday, I think it was, I was walking into a store and there were little white feathers all along the curb as I'm walking into the store, and I noticed them, and there were like bigger ones and littler ones, and I thought either this is a sign from the angels or there was a bird fight. And I want to say that the angels have a sense of humor because it could have been both, but I got the message that, that's my sign, finding a feather. And I just, recognized it and had a little chuckle. But there have been times where I remember being at a friend's funeral, the lunch after the funeral, and we're in this pavilion. It's like a park pavilion, enclosed, all inside, and they had place settings for all the people, and it was crowded, maybe a couple hundred people there. And I'm looking for my place setting, and sure enough, sit down, and I honestly, the only place setting in the whole place that had a white feather. There was a white feather by
Wow.
my name card. And I looked around, did anyone else get a white feather? No. And I got that it was my friend in spirit who was just maybe thanking me for being there or something. She knew, I don't know if she knew that what I did before she died, but it was almost like maybe my light was on or something, and she saw that I can communicate with the other side, and she gave me a feather inside a building.
That's pretty amazing.
So, and I thought one time my power animal is cardinal or redbird. I got many stories I could share about that, but I thought the day that I find a red feather is going to be like I always call it my red letter day. It's red feather day. And I did find red feathers. And it's always when you find your feather or your sign, always, if it's a feather or a coin or something, pick it up and put it to your heart and ask the angels or spirit what message does it mean for you?
Yeah, I need to do that. Sometimes I've been very anxious about something, walking along, and there's the feather. And I know it's a comforting thing. So I
It
don't
could just
step
be
back.
that they're telling you they're with you.
Absolutely. And just knowing they're with me at that particular time means all the world.
Yes. And that's enough sometimes.
Mhm.
Deborah has her hand raised.
Hi, thank you so much, Nancy, for sharing. I love your story and so fascinating to hear about what's the background of how you came to do your automatic writing. I was just wondering, and I hope this isn't a silly question, but I have seen a lot of repeat numbers, and I know like you can kind of look that up, but I kind of just wonder what it really means. I keep seeing 111 a lot. Just crazy. At first I thought, well, maybe I'm just somehow like timing things and I'll just happen to like look at the clock, but I don't think I have that keen a sense of timing. It's just weird. It will show up on other places, like it's shown up on receipts when I've gone to stores to pay. Not just that, but like it was probably about the middle of last week, like 666 showed up on a receipt when I went to pay, which I thought was weird. And on the thermostat, I didn't even know that the thermostat had time on there, you know, where you could see it. And I would just like, I was upstairs, not paying any attention to the time at all. And I would come downstairs and I happened to look at the thermostat. It was on there. There have been other times when same thing. I would just not have any idea what time it is. And I look at my phone and it's like 111 on there. And I sometimes other repeat numbers too, but I was wondering what that might be or what you.
To me, it's another sign. The angels will use numbers, especially series of numbers. I tell you a couple of different stories about that. Nick Bunick, author, I think gave credence to the 444. His belief or his path made him realize that instead of just the Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, the three, he added angels. Angels were number 4. So, and he would see 444 all the time, series of 4s all the time. And I think this simultaneously came to him as he figured out that angels were not the 4th. But people have reported seeing 1111, and I think that had significance some years ago. I don't remember exactly what it was, some kind of a opening, spiritual opening or something. You might ask your angels what the particular number means for you. I know that there's a lot written about the different number sequences, what they mean. I see these little TikTok videos every so often, what the numbers mean. I don't know if they're true or not. So I always like to say, ask your angels for what's true for you on that. A cute little story, because I also believe that 4 represents the angels. I was having a moment one day and I'm driving, thinking about something. I was thinking about something. And I wanted validation if the angels were listening. And I pull up behind a taxi cab, a yellow taxi cab. And the numbers on the back of the cab were 7444444. I thought, okay, thank you. That's all I needed. It's usually validation that whatever you're thinking about, or like Honey said, I think Honey said, it was just validation to know that your angels are there in those moments when you need them. And usually they come right away. If I didn't say that earlier, whether you're aware of it or not, they'll come right away in the moment of need. They're always there, I think, but we're aware that they're there in a moment when we need them.
Thank you.
When you ask something for some help and you don't feel like you get it.
Okay, well, oftentimes I think the person is expecting it to be a certain answer, or it has to be this certain way, or has to come in this certain way. And it comes in a different way. And so you're so focused on how you think it's going to come that you miss how it comes. So I always say to people, stay completely open and be very mindful of all that's happening around you in the moment. You know, don't ignore something. I think I was doing a reading one time. I was doing something and the phone rang to interrupt me. And I thought, dang, the phone rang, interrupted me. And it was actually part of the experience. I don't remember the details, but the phone ringing at that time was part of the answer in the reading. So it's being mindful of everything that happens. It's like when the minister and I are talking in the bookstore and the book falls on the floor. We could have just thought, well, a book just fell off the shelf, and picked it up and put it back on the shelf. But being aware of everything that's happening, he knew it, that was the angels wanted me to have that book.
Yeah, that's pretty clear.
Or you can look at it like, oh, just a book fell off the shelf. So I think it's just being mindful of everything and not expecting an answer to come a certain way. Be open to how else can it come? What else is possible?
Carol mentions in the chat that about one of Kyle Graves' books. You want to talk about that, Carol? Angel Numbers.
Yeah, it's just a small paperback book, but it goes, it's pretty extensive, and they aren't long explanations, they're short, you know. But yeah, I just keep it right up here on the shelf, and
So I could fall down on you.
yeah. Well, it's not that heavy, but yeah.
Well, there are a lot of different ways that angels can get our attention. In one of my questions, when I was asking about preparing for this talk tonight, and I kept telling you, I kept coming up with nothing, and I was just supposed to wing it. Well, I pulled a couple of angel cards, you know, these little one-word cards. I've got a little bag of these one-word cards. Let's have one or two words on it, right? You've seen these, right? And I usually don't even bother. I just have this bag sitting here, and I thought, oh, for the fun of it, I'll just pull a card to see what they want me to talk about tonight. Guess what card I pulled? Blank. The only card in the deck that is blank. I said, okay, I got the message. But see, these things can be little signposts along the way, like numbers, finding coins, finding feathers, finding red feathers. What else? There's so many. Seeing numbers.
Birds tapping at the window.
That happened to me. That's how I met my power animal, Redbird. I was taking an art class with a friend, and up in her second floor bedroom studio. And I'm painting away. I'm not paying any attention. I'm intent on doing my painting. And there was this tap, 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 tap on the window. And she says to me, I think, and it was a redbird cardinal. She said, I think he's trying to get your attention. And it was from that moment on that I knew the cardinal was my power animal. I've had so many experiences with cardinal showing up right at the right time, in the right moment, always on time, always in the right moment. I moved to Southern California some years ago, lived in the desert, and there are no redbirds in the desert. And I was literally depressed. How will I ever see a redbird again? Right? So one day we're driving from Palm Desert to Los Angeles on the freeway. And there's a railroad track that runs parallel kind of to the expressway. And we're chatting away, and I happen to look at a freight train that must have had 40 boxcars with a great big red bird painted on the side of the car, whatever company logo that was. And I went, thank you. I mean, the angels will find a way to get a message to you. It's about us identifying it. That's what I think. You know?
Yeah. Well, we're about at the end of our time. So we could listen to that, I think, for a lot longer.
Well, thank you so
Really
much.
appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And thanks
never
to your
thought I'd
angels
Thank you.
for giving you what we need to hear.
I never thought I'd survive that ordeal, and here I am all these years later, and hopefully helping people.
No doubt.
You
I
are.
just wanna thank you.
Absolutely.
The inner voice is free. You can subscribe for free, and what that means is you get an email around the first of the month saying that the magazine's been posted. It's best read with a computer screen, not so much on a cell phone. And I still do readings. I'll put a little ad in for myself.
Yes, absolutely. And Giles put some of your links in the chat. So remember to save the chat. And if you don't know how to do that, either at the top or the bottom of that screen, the chat screen is three little dots, and you click on that, and there's it says save chat, and it will save it in a Zoom folder on your computer. It'll
Thank you,
create it.
everyone. And thank you, Sheila, for having me.
Well, thank you. And
Yeah.
thanks to
Thank
Peg.
you.
Thank
I
you.
hope it was enlightening.
Good night.
Next meeting,
Yeah.
if anybody wants to know what's going to be at the next meeting, we have somebody else to speak. And Christine is not here tonight, but she has a couple of friends that she asked me to invite, and they have ET experiences. So one of them anyway has agreed. I've got to turn off the recording.